My name is Celeste. I'm 34 years old, and until last Christmas, I was the ultimate peacekeeper in my family. For 10 years, I kept quiet while my mother-in-law, Victoria, criticised my parenting of my 7-year-old daughter, Emma. I funded family events that Victoria took credit for, all to keep the peace. But when Victoria publicly humiliated Emma and sent her crying from the Christmas party over a broken ornament, something in me snapped. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from and hit the subscribe button if you've ever dealt with a difficult in-law. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. I still remember the day I met Michael. It was at a marketing conference in Chicago where I was presenting on digital strategy. I had worked my way up to marketing executive at a major firm by the time I was 24, and my career was everything to me back then. Michael approached me after my presentation with insightful questions that quickly turned into dinner, which turned into a whirlwind romance. We married within a year, and initially my relationship with his mother Victoria seemed promising. She was elegant, well-connected, and seemed impressed by my career accomplishments. She hosted a lavish wedding for us, introducing me to everyone, and as the brilliant marketing executive who swept my Michael off his feet. I remember feeling so grateful and hopeful about our future relationship. Everything changed when Emma was born. Victoria's criticism began subtly at first. Are you sure she should be wearing that? Or, in my day, we never let babies cry for even a moment. Small comments that grew increasingly pointed as Emma got older. By the time Emma was 3, Victoria had appointed herself the authority on my parenting. Celeste, you really should enforce more discipline. The child is running wild, she'd say, after Emma would excitedly show her a drawing. Or, Michael turned out wonderfully, because I never allowed him to speak out of turn, when Emma would interrupt adult conversations with her enthusiastic thoughts. Michael was caught in the middle. He'd defend me in private, saying, Mum has always been controlling, it's not just you, but in Victoria's presence, he'd often fall silent. Years of conditioning had taught him it was easier to weather the storm than fight back. I understood his conflict, but it hurt watching him stand by, while his mother criticised the way I raised our daughter. As Emma grew older, Victoria's controlling nature extended to family celebrations. Christmas became her particular domain. Each year she insisted on hosting elaborate Christmas gatherings, inviting extended family and friends, and making sure everyone knew the tremendous effort she had put into every detail. 3 years ago, when Emma was 4, I suggested hosting Christmas at our home. Victoria's response was immediate and cutting. Dear, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but some things require experience and taste. Everyone expects my Christmas celebration. Let's not disappoint them with experimentation. That's when I devised a compromise that Michael reluctantly agreed to. I would fund the celebrations, the catering, decorations, gifts for extended family, but allow Victoria to host and take credit. It seemed like a small price for family harmony. Michael knew about the arrangement, but was relieved not to have to confront his mother. She's getting older, he'd say. These traditions mean everything to her. Over the years, I silently paid for increasingly elaborate celebrations, while Victoria basked in the praise from family and friends. Victoria, you've outdone yourself, they'd exclaim, while she'd respond with false modesty. Nothing's too good for my family. Meanwhile, I'd catch Michael's apologetic glances from across the room. Emma, our bright and spirited daughter, loved Christmas more than any other holiday. She'd count down months in advance, crafting homemade decorations and planning gifts for everyone. She had always been naturally creative, preferring to make things rather than buy them. Her relationship with Victoria had been relatively good in her early years. Victoria enjoyed showing off her adorable granddaughter to friends. But as Emma developed her own personality and opinions, Victoria grew more critical. She's so much like you, Celeste, Victoria would say, not as a compliment. I'd smile and respond, yes, isn't that wonderful, which usually ended that line of conversation. Last year, at age 6, Emma had started to notice her grandmother's subtle digs. Grandma doesn't like my pictures very much, she observed after Victoria had dismissed Emma's art project with a cursory glance. It broke my heart, but I encouraged Emma to keep creating and expressing herself. As this Christmas approached, the Christmas that would change everything, I was determined to make it special for Emma. She was now 7 in age, where holiday memories begin to solidify into lifelong recollections. Despite Victoria's controlling nature, I wanted Emma to experience the magic of family Christmas traditions. Little did I know how memorable this particular Christmas would become, not for its magic, but for the long overdue boundaries it would establish. The preparation for this year's Christmas party began in October. Victoria called me with her usual directive disguised as a request. "Celeste, I'll be hosting Christmas again this year. I assume that works for you and Michael." "Of course, Victoria," I replied, already mentally calculating the budget I'd need. Over the years, Victoria's expectations had grown, and this year's celebration would cost me nearly $5,000 money I gladly spent for Emma's Christmas joy and family peace. Michael and I had our usual quiet conversation about the arrangement. "I know this isn't ideal," he said, holding my hand across our kitchen table after Emma had gone to bed. "But you know how she gets when she feels threatened." "It's fine," I assured him, though we both knew it wasn't. "Emma loves Christmas at Grandma's house." That part was true. Our daughter loved the grandeur of Victoria's decorations, unaware that her own mother had selected and paid for most of them. The next weekend, Emma and I went shopping for decorations. Victoria had demanded a silver and blue theme, nothing gaudy. So we browsed through upscale department stores, selecting ornaments, table settings, and decor that would meet her standards. "Mom, can I get this one with my money?" Emma asked carefully, holding up a crystal star ornament that caught the light perfectly. It cost $20, a significant portion of her saved allowance. "Are you sure that's how you want to spend your money, sweetie?" I asked, knowing how long she'd saved for a new art set. Emma nodded solemnly. "It's for Grandma's tree. I want to put something special on it from me." My heart melted. Despite Victoria's critical nature, Emma still sought her approval and love. "It's beautiful, honey. Grandma will love it." The week before the party, Victoria came to inspect our purchases. She rifled through the decorations, occasionally grimacing or sighing. "Well, I suppose this will have to do," she said, holding up the tablecloth I'd specially ordered from a designer she had previously mentioned. "And Emma has a special ornament she bought for your tree," I mentioned. Victoria glanced at Emma, who eagerly presented her crystal star. "It's nice, dear. We'll see if it matches the other ornaments." Emma's smile faltered slightly. As Victoria continued her inspection, I felt my frustration growing but tamped it down. This pattern had played out for years. Victoria criticizing my choices while unaware that I was funding the entire event, but seeing her dismiss Emma's thoughtful gesture hit a nerve. The day before Christmas Eve, I spoke with my best friend Natalie on the phone while finalizing some details for the party. "I don't understand why you keep doing this," Natalie said. "You're letting her take credit for your generosity while she continues to treat you like you're beneath her." "It's complicated," I replied, the standard answer I'd given for years. "No, it's not," Natalie countered. "You're teaching Emma that it's okay to let people walk all over you. Is that really the lesson you want her to learn?" Her words stayed with me as Emma and I packed the car with decorations, food, and gifts on Christmas Eve morning. Emma was vibrating with excitement, clutching her special ornament carefully wrapped in tissue paper. "Do you think everyone will like the party, Mom?" she asked as we drove to Victoria's house. "They'll love it, sweetie," I assured her, thinking of the $2,000 catering order and custom decorations I'd arranged. Little did I know that this Christmas party would be different from all the others. Not because of the decorations or food, but because it would be the day I finally stood up for Emma and myself. The party began at 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Victoria's home looked stunning. The professional decorators I'd hired had transformed it into a winter wonderland with silver and blue accents throughout. The catering staff was setting up an elaborate buffet in the dining room, and soft Christmas music played from the hidden speakers. "You've arrived just in time," Victoria said, as we entered as though we were guests, rather than the providers of everything around us. The caterers had questions I couldn't possibly answer. She gestured vaguely toward the kitchen before turning to greet her neighbour. Emma tugged at my hand. "Can I put my ornament on the tree now, Mum?" "Let's wait until a few more guests arrive," I suggested, knowing Victoria would want to supervise this addition to her perfectly decorated tree. Within an hour, the house was filled with family and friends. Michael's cousins with their children, Victoria's friends from her garden club neighbours, and a few of our close friends. Everyone complimented the beautiful decorations and delicious food. "Victoria, you've outdone yourself this year," Michael's Aunt Margaret exclaimed, admiring the elaborately decorated tree. "Oh, it's nothing," Victoria replied with false modesty. "Christmas is about family after all." She caught my eye briefly across the room, and I smiled politely, playing my usual role in this charade. Emma was excited to show everyone her new Christmas dress and share her school art projects with anyone who would listen. She carefully carried around a plate of the special Christmas cookies we had baked together, offering them to guests with pride. "Emma, careful with those crumbs," Victoria called out sharply when Emma approached a group of her garden club friends. "And stand up straight, dear. No one can understand you when you mumble." I watched Emma's shoulders stiffen as she carefully adjusted her posture and spoke more clearly. My stomach tightened, but I maintained my smile. Just another Christmas navigating Victoria's criticisms. Michael was busy playing host, pouring drinks and engaging in conversations around the room. He was good at this role, charming and attentive, though I noticed he made sure to stay in areas of the house where his mother wasn't holding court. Throughout the evening, I observed how Victoria interacted with the other children at the party. With Michael's cousin's children, she was indulgent and warm. "Jacob, would you like another cookie? You're growing so tall." And "Sophia, what a lovely drawing, you're so talented." But with Emma, there was always a correction. "Emma, ladies, don't laugh so loudly." Or, "Emma, you've already had one sweet, that's quite enough." Each time I watched my daughter's natural exuberance dim slightly as she tried to meet her grandmother's impossible standards. I felt the familiar burn of frustration, but swallowed it down with practiced ease. "Just get through the evening," I told myself. "It's only once a year." As the night progressed, several guests approached me to compliment various aspects of the party. "The food is amazing, and those custom napkins with the family initial are such a nice touch." Victoria always managed to appear at my elbow during these conversations. "So glad you're enjoying it," she would say smoothly, inserting herself between me and the guest. I believe in attending to the details. By 7 o'clock, Emma's initial excitement had faded into careful vigilance. I watched her check Victoria's location before doing anything, before getting food, before talking to guests, before even laughing at someone's joke. The carefree joy that normally characterized my daughter was being systematically suppressed, and I felt powerless to stop it. "Mum," Emma whispered, tugging at my sleeve during a lull in the party, "can I put my special ornament on the tree now I've been really good?" The fact that she felt she had to earn the right to contribute to the celebration broke something in me. "Of course, sweetie, it's your ornament. You don't have to be good to put it on the tree." Emma's face brightened. "I want to put it right in the front where everyone can see how pretty it is." I watched as she carefully carried her tissue-wrapped treasure to the magnificent Christmas tree in the living room, feeling a mix of pride in her enthusiasm and apprehension about Victoria's potential reaction. The Christmas tree stood in Victoria's bay window, a 7-foot blue spruce, decorated with antique glass ornaments, twinkling silver lights, and blue velvet ribbons cascading from top to bottom. It was truly spectacular. The professional decorator I'd hired had outdone herself this year. Emma stood before it, her small face illuminated by the lights, carefully unwrapping her crystal star ornament. The excitement in her eyes was visible as she gently held it up, turning it so it caught the light and scattered tiny rainbows across the wall. "Look how it makes little rainbows, Mom," she called to me, her voice filled with wonder. I smiled and nodded encouragingly, standing a few feet away as other guests mingled around us. Michael was in the kitchen helping with drinks, and Victoria was showing her antique nativity set to some of her friends in the adjacent dining room. Emma carefully selected a branch near the front of the tree at her eye level. She stood on her tiptoes, stretching to place her precious ornament just right. I watched with pride as her little tongue stuck out slightly in concentration, a habit she'd had since she was a toddler tackling important tasks. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As Emma stretched to position her ornament, her foot caught in the tree skirt. She wobbled slightly instinctively, reaching out to steady herself against the nearest thing, the tree. The tree shifted not enough to fall, but enough to set several ornaments swinging. I took a step forward, recognizing the potential disaster, but it was too late. An ornament near the top, a large glass ball, slipped from its hook and fell, hitting a branch on the way down, which sent it careening into another ornament. That second ornament, a hand-painted glass angel that Victoria had mentioned several times, was a family heirloom, dislodged and plummeted to the hardwood floor. The sound of shattering glass seemed unnaturally loud, cutting through the Christmas music and conversation like a thunderclap. Emma froze, her star ornament still clutched in her hand, her eyes wide with shock and growing horror as she stared at the broken pieces on the floor. The room fell silent. I rushed to Emma's side just as Victoria appeared in the doorway, drawn by the distinctive sound of breaking glass. "What happened?" Victoria demanded, though the evidence was clear on the floor before us. Emma's lower lip trembled. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I was putting my star on the tree and I slipped, and do you have any idea what you've done?" Victoria's voice was ice cold, cutting Emma off mid-sentence. That angel belonged to my grandmother. It's over 100 years old and completely irreplaceable. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to. Of course you didn't mean to, Victoria snapped. You never mean to, do you? Just like you didn't mean to spill juice on my sofa last month or break that figurine last summer. This is exactly what happens when children aren't taught proper respect for other people's belongings. This last comment was directed at me, though Victoria's eyes remained fixed on my trembling daughter. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some pretending to be engaged in conversation, others openly watching the scene unfold. I put my arm around Emma's shoulders, feeling her small body beginning to shake with suppressed sobs. Victoria, it was an accident, I said quietly. Emma feels terrible about it. Feeling terrible doesn't restore priceless heirlooms, does it? Victoria replied sharply. Then she turned to Emma, her voice slightly raised to ensure everyone could hear. I think it's best if you go upstairs to the guest room for the rest of the evening. Clearly, you're not ready to be around valuable things or participate properly in adult gatherings. Emma's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. The crystal star slipped from her fingers as she brought her hands up to cover her face. I caught the star before it could fall. Victoria, that's not necessary. She can stay with me and we'll be careful. This is my home, Celeste, and I think I know best how to handle situations like this. Victoria's tone left no room for discussion. Emma needs to learn that actions have consequences. Emma looked up at me, her face a picture of devastation and humiliation. I want to go home, Mommy, she whispered, using a name she had outgrown years ago, a sure sign of her distress. I knelt down to her level, wiping tears from her cheeks. I'll take you upstairs, sweetheart. It's going to be okay. As I led my sobbing daughter through the silent room of onlookers, I caught glimpses of different reactions. Sympathy, discomfort, judgment. Victoria stood imperiously by the tree, already directing someone to clean up the broken ornament. In the guest bedroom, Emma collapsed into my arms, her small body heaving with sobs. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't want to ruin Christmas. You didn't ruin anything, I assured her, stroking her hair. It was an accident, and accidents happen to everyone. Grandma hates me now, she hiccuped between sobs. No, sweetie, Grandma was just upset about her ornament. She doesn't hate you. The words felt hollow even as I spoke them. She yelled at me in front of everyone, Emma whispered, her voice small and broken. Taylor and Josh saw, and all Grandma's friends. Everyone thinks I'm bad. Jake. As I held my heartbroken child, something shifted inside me. The careful peace I had maintained for years suddenly seemed not worth the cost. Emma was learning terrible lessons, that she had to be perfect to be loved, that mistakes were unforgivable, that she deserved public humiliation for an accident. Listen to me, I said firmly, holding her tear-streaked face between my hands. You are not bad. You are kind and creative and wonderful. What happened was an accident, and while we should always try to be careful around special things, no ornament, no thing is more important than your feelings. Emma sniffled, looking uncertain. Really? Really? I confirmed. You stay here and rest for a little while. I'm going to go talk to Grandma. As I closed the door behind me, leaving Emma curled up on the bed with a promise to return soon, I felt a calm certainty replace my usual anxiety about confronting Victoria. For 10 years, I had prioritized peace over respect. For 7 years, I had allowed my daughter to witness her mother being diminished. Not anymore. I returned to the party with a strange sense of calm washing over me. The gathering had resumed its rhythm, though I noticed people speaking in hushed tones, likely discussing the scene they had just witnessed. Victoria was in the center of the living room, dramatically recounting the significance of the broken ornament to a group of sympathetic listeners. Been in our family for generations. My grandmother brought it over from Europe. Some things simply cannot be replaced, and children today aren't taught to respect. She stopped abruptly when she noticed me approaching. Victoria, could I speak with you for a moment? I asked quietly. She gave me a tight smile. Of course, but I'm in the middle of a conversation. It's important? I insisted, my voice pleasant but firm. With obvious reluctance, Victoria excused herself from her audience and followed me to a quieter corner of the room. If this is about Emma, I stand by what I said. Children need to learn consequences, and that ornament was priceless. I understand you're upset about the ornament, I began, maintaining my composure. But sending a 7-year-old child away from a family celebration over an accident seems excessive. Victoria drew herself up. I don't expect you to understand family traditions and heirlooms, Celeste, given your background. She often made these vague allusions to my middle-class upbringing as though it were a character flaw. What I understand, I said evenly, is that my daughter is upstairs crying because her grandmother humiliated her in front of everyone over an accident. Well, Victoria sniffed. Perhaps this will be a valuable lesson for her. And frankly, I've put too much work into this party to have it ruined by careless behaviour. Something in me snapped at that moment, not in an angry way, but like the final thread of restraint breaking free. You've put work into this party, I asked softly. Of course I have. The planning, the coordination, do you think all this happens by magic? She gestured around at the decorations, the food, the elegant settings. No, Victoria, I said, my voice still calm. Not by magic, by my credit card. Victoria blinked, momentarily confused. Excuse me? This party, I continued. The caterers, the decorations, the gifts for the children, the premium alcohol everyone's enjoying. I paid for all of it. Just like I paid for last Christmas and the Christmas before that. Victoria's face flushed. I don't know what you're talking about. Michael and I arranged everything. Michael knows that I fund these parties, I said. It was an arrangement we made years ago to keep the peace. You get to host and take the credit, and I get to give my daughter a nice Christmas without conflict. I could see guests nearby starting to tune into our conversation. Victoria noticed too and lowered her voice to a harsh whisper. This is completely inappropriate, Celeste. If you're trying to embarrass me... No, Victoria, you embarrassed my daughter. I'm simply stating facts. At that moment, Michael appeared at my side, having finally noticed the tension between us. Everything okay here? He asked, his eyes darting between his mother and me. Your wife is making the most ridiculous claims, Victoria hissed. She's trying to suggest that she's been secretly funding our family Christmases. Michael's face fell, and I knew immediately that Victoria had expected him to deny it. Instead, he said, Mom, it's true. Celeste has been incredibly generous for years. We agreed it was the best solution. Victoria's expression shifted from indignation to shock. You knew about this. By now we had the attention of several nearby guests who weren't even pretending not to listen. Yes, Michael said firmly, and I should have been more upfront about it. Celeste deserves credit for her generosity. Victoria shook her head in disbelief. So this whole time, while everyone has been complimenting me on these parties? Yes, I confirmed. And I was fine with that arrangement until tonight. But I will not stand by while you humiliate my daughter over an accident with an ornament that, yes, may be irreplaceable, but is still just a thing. Victoria looked around, suddenly aware that many people were watching this exchange. She attempted to regain control. We can discuss this privately later. This isn't the appropriate time or place. I agree, I said. The appropriate time would have been before you sent Emma crying from the room. The appropriate place would have been anywhere that didn't maximize her embarrassment. It does. Victoria's face hardened. I see. So you're willing to cause a scene and ruin Christmas for everyone. Michael stepped closer to me, placing his hand supportively on my back. Mom, no one's ruining Christmas except the person who sent a 7-year-old to her room over an accident. Victoria looked genuinely shocked at her son's stance. In all our years of marriage, while Michael had supported me privately, he had rarely directly contradicted his mother. This public solidarity was unprecedented. Well, Victoria said stiffly, if that's how you both feel, perhaps you should take your daughter and leave my home. I expected to feel panic or regret at this moment of confrontation, but instead I felt a surprising relief. Actually, since I paid for this party, maybe you should leave. A collective gasp went through the onlookers. Victoria's face went white, then red. This is still my house, she spluttered. Yes, it is, I acknowledged. And we'll respect that. But everyone here should know that the food they're eating, the drinks they're enjoying, and the gifts under the tree were provided by us, not you. You've taken credit for my generosity for the last time, Victoria. Michael's Aunt Margaret stepped forward from the crowd of listeners. Is this true? Victoria, has Celeste been funding these Christmas parties? Victoria looked trapped. Well, they've contributed, of course. That's what family does. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I have all the receipts if anyone's interested. The caterers, the decorators, the custom ornaments with the family crest that everyone complimented earlier. Victoria looked at her son pleadingly. Michael, are you going to let her do this? Michael sighed deeply. Mum, this has gone on too long. Celeste has been incredibly patient for years, letting you take credit while she foots the bill. But treating Emma that way crossed a line. So you're choosing them over me, your own mother? Victoria's voice rose dramatically. I'm choosing what's right, Michael replied calmly. And what's right is acknowledging Celeste's generosity and apologizing to Emma. Victoria looked around at the curious faces of her friends and family, her social standing visibly crumbling before her eyes. I will not be dictated to in my own home. If you're so unhappy with my hospitality, perhaps you should all leave. With that, she stormed out of the room and up the stairs, leaving a stunned silence behind her. I exhaled slowly, the confrontation finally over. I hadn't planned for things to go this far, but there was no turning back now. The years of silent accommodation had ended in one explosive moment of truth. After Victoria's dramatic exit, the party fell into an awkward silence. Guests exchanged glances, unsure whether they should leave or stay. Michael looked at me with a mix of pride and concern. I'm sorry it came to this, he said quietly. I squeezed his hand. I'm not. It was long overdue. To my surprise, Michael's Aunt Margaret approached us. I've watched Victoria treat you both this way for years, she said. It's about time someone stood up to her. Other family members began to voice similar sentiments. She's been taking credit for these parties for years. That explains why they suddenly got so much nicer about 3 years ago. Remember how she acted when Celeste suggested hosting at their house? It seemed that once the dam had broken, everyone had observations about Victoria's controlling behaviour that they'd been too polite to mention. Rather than facing judgment for confronting my mother-in-law, I was receiving support and understanding. What about the party? Michael's cousin asked. Should we go? Michael looked at me, deferring to my decision since I'd been the one to fund the event. The party goes on, I decided. Emma deserves a Christmas celebration, and I didn't pay for all this food and drink for it to go to waste. A cheer went up from several guests, and the tension in the room noticeably dissipated. I turned to Michael. I'm going to get Emma. I found our daughter still curled up on the guest bed, her eyes red from crying, but no longer actively in tears. Hey, sweetie, I said gently. She sat up immediately. Is Grandma still mad at me? Grandma is upset, but not just with you. She's upset with grown-up things. I explained, sitting beside her. But the party is still going on, and everyone would love for you to come back down. Emma looked uncertain. But Grandma said I had to stay here. Well, Dad and I think that was unfair. It was an accident, and everyone has accidents sometimes. Really, I can come back to the party. Hope flickered in her eyes. Really? I confirmed, smoothing her hair. And guess what? Your dad and I have a little surprise for everyone. They're all about to find out that it was your mum who planned this whole beautiful party. Emma's eyes widened. You did not, Grandma. I nodded. For a few years now, I just let Grandma take credit because it made her happy. Like when I let Lily say she made the card for Mrs. Peterson, even though I did most of it, Emma asked, referencing a situation with a friend from school. Something like that, I admitted. But sometimes we need to tell the truth, especially when someone isn't being kind. Emma considered this. Is Grandma going to be at the party? I don't think so, honey. She's taking some time to herself right now. Emma was quiet for a moment. Is it my fault because I broke her special ornament? No, sweetie, I said firmly. This is about grown-up things that have been going on for a long time. None of this is your fault, okay? She nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. Now how about we go back down and enjoy the party? I think they're about to bring out those chocolate fountains you were excited about. Emma's face brightened and she slid off the bed. As we headed back downstairs, I felt a mixture of emotions, relief that the truth was finally out, concern about the family fallout, but primarily a deep sense of peace, that I had finally stood up for Emma and myself. When we returned to the main floor, guests greeted Emma warmly. Several people made a point of telling her that accidents happen to everyone, sharing their own stories of holiday mishaps. Michael immediately came over and gave Emma a big hug. I'm sorry about what happened, Princess, he said. Are you okay? Emma nodded. Mom says I can stay at the party now. Absolutely, Michael confirmed. In fact, let's get some of that chocolate fondue I saw them setting up. As Emma and Michael headed toward the dessert table, I was approached by several guests who wanted to express their support. Some shared their own stories of difficult in-laws, while others complimented me on the beautiful party I had planned. I always wondered how Victoria suddenly became so stylish with her parties, Michael's cousin Jessica remarked. The decorations and food took such a sophisticated turn a few years ago. Now it makes sense. Throughout the evening, I received text messages from Victoria to Michael's phone. He showed them to me with a sigh. She says she's humiliated and will never forgive us, he reported. Give her time. I suggested, though I wasn't entirely convinced reconciliation would be possible or even desirable, without significant changes in Victoria's behaviour. As the evening progressed, the party actually became more relaxed and genuine, without Victoria's constant critical presence. Emma gradually regained her natural exuberance, showing guests her dance moves and chatting animatedly about school and her art projects, without constantly checking over her shoulder for disapproval. Around 9 o'clock, as the party began to wind down, Michael pulled me aside. "I need to apologise to you," he said earnestly. "I should have stood up to my mother years ago. I let her treat you and Emma poorly because it was easier than confronting her." "We both did what we thought was best at the time," I replied. "But it wasn't best, was it? Not for you, not for Emma, and not even for me." He took my hands in his. "I'm proud of you for finally saying enough is enough, and I promise I'll be a better partner and father going forward." His words meant more to me than he could know. For years, I had wondered if Michael even noticed the dynamic between his mother and me, or if he simply accepted it as normal. Hearing him acknowledge the problem and commit to change gave me hope that something positive might come from this difficult evening. Christmas morning was quieter than usual. Victoria normally joined us for gift opening at our house, but this year it was just the three of us. Emma seemed concerned at first. "Is Grandma coming over?" she asked as we gathered around our tree. "Not this year, sweetie," Michael explained gently. Emma's face fell. "Is it because of what happened at the party? Did I break the family?" Michael and I exchanged glances. "No, honey," I assured her. "You didn't break anything. Grandma and Mom and Dad need some grown-up time to sort things out." "Like a time out?" Emma asked. Michael smiled. "Something like that. But it has nothing to do with you, okay? Sometimes adults need to figure out better ways to talk to each other." Throughout the day, we received calls and texts from various family members, most expressing support for how we'd handled the situation. Even Victoria's sister called to say she thought it had been a long time coming. "Victoria has always been difficult," she confided. "She's used to getting her way and taking credit. Maybe this will be a wake-up call for her." Victoria herself made several attempts to regain control through other family members calling Michael's cousins and aunts to tell her side of the story. Some relayed her messages to us that we had humiliated her, that we were ungrateful for all she had done for our family, that Emma needed stricter discipline. Michael and I agreed to present a united front. "We're open to talking with her," Michael told his relatives, "but not until she's willing to acknowledge how she's treated Celeste and Emma." Despite our resolve, I found myself wondering if we had made the right decision. Had we overreacted to the ornament incident? Should we have continued the charade for Emma's sake? Was standing up to Victoria worth potentially fracturing the family? But then I would look at Emma playing freely with her Christmas gifts, laughing without constantly checking to see if she was being too loud, being a normal 7-year-old without walking on eggshells. And I knew we had done the right thing. A week after Christmas, we received an unexpected visit from Victoria. I was helping Emma with an art project at the kitchen table when the doorbell rang. Michael answered it, and I heard his surprised voice from the entryway. "Mum, I didn't expect to see you." I tensed immediately, exchanging a glance with Emma, who had also gone still, her paintbrush hovering over her paper. We listened as Michael and Victoria exchanged terse greetings, and then footsteps approached the kitchen. Victoria appeared in the doorway, looking less perfectly put together than usual. She wore minimal makeup, and her normally immaculate hair seemed hastily styled. Her eyes went immediately to Emma, who shrank slightly in her chair. "Hello, Emma," Victoria said, her voice carefully controlled. "That looks like a nice painting you're working on." Emma glanced at me uncertainly. "Thank you, Grandma," she replied quietly. An awkward silence fell over the room. Michael moved to stand beside me, a gesture of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by his mother. "I wondered if I might have a word with Emma," Victoria said finally. "Privately." "I don't think that's a good idea right now," I replied gently but firmly. Victoria's lips tightened, but she nodded. "Very well, then I'll say what I came to say with both of you present." She turned to Emma. "I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for how I reacted at the Christmas party. The ornament was special to me, but it was just a thing, and I shouldn't have sent you away from the party." Emma's eyes widened in surprise. In her 7 years, I had never heard Victoria apologize to anyone, let alone a child. "It's okay," Emma said automatically, though her body language remained guarded. "It's not okay," Victoria corrected her, though without her usual sharpness. "It was wrong of me to embarrass you in front of everyone. Accidents happen even to adults." I watched in amazement as Victoria attempted this clearly rehearsed but seemingly sincere apology. Emma relaxed slightly, though she still looked to me for cues on how to respond. "Thank you for apologizing to Emma," I said. "That means a lot." Victoria straightened her posture. "I was wondering if Emma might like to help me in the garden for a bit while you and I talk Celeste." This was directed at me, though her eyes flicked to Michael as well. I looked at Emma. "Would you like to help Grandma in the garden for a little while?" Emma considered this, then nodded cautiously. "Can I show her my new flower book first?" "Of course," I said, relieved that Emma wasn't too traumatized to interact with her grandmother. As Emma ran to get her book, Victoria turned to Michael. "I'd prefer to speak with Celeste alone, if that's acceptable." Michael looked at me questioningly. I nodded. "It's fine." After Emma had proudly shown Victoria her book of flower varieties, and the two had headed out to the garden, Michael squeezed my shoulder. "I'll be in the office if you need me," he said meaningfully. Victoria and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the remains of Emma's art project between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this past week." Victoria finally said, her voice more subdued than I'd ever heard it. "About the party, about my behaviour over the years." I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "It wasn't easy to hear that you've been funding the Christmas celebrations," she admitted. "Or that everyone knows now." "That wasn't my intention," I said truthfully. "I never planned to expose that arrangement. It was only after what happened with Emma that I felt I had to speak up." Victoria nodded stiffly. "Michael tells me you've been paying for these parties for 3 years." "Yes." "Why?" she asked simply. "Why would you do that and let me take credit?" Ow. I considered my answer carefully. "Because it seemed important to you to be seen as the hostess. Because I wanted Emma to have happy holiday memories without tension. Because sometimes peace is worth more than recognition." Victoria looked down at her hands. "I've always prided myself on being the matriarch of this family," she said slowly. "On maintaining traditions, on being the one everyone relies on for these gatherings. When Michael married you, and especially after Emma was born, I feared becoming irrelevant." This admission surprised me. Victoria had always projected such confidence and authority that I'd never considered she might feel insecure about her position in the family. "I wasn't trying to replace you," I said. "Perhaps not intentionally," Victoria replied. "But you're younger, successful in your career, a mother to Michael's child. Everything that defined my identity seemed to be slipping away." She looked up at me. "That doesn't excuse my behaviour, but it might help explain it." I wasn't sure how to respond. On one hand, I felt sympathy for her fears. On the other, they didn't justify years of criticism and control. "Where do we go from here?" I asked finally. Victoria straightened her shoulders. "I've been speaking with my friend Eleanor. You've met her, she's a therapist. She suggested that perhaps we might consider some family counselling." This was so unexpected that I couldn't immediately formulate a response. "You and Michael and me," Victoria clarified. "And eventually Emma too when appropriate. Eleanor says it might help us establish healthier patterns of communication." I was genuinely stunned. Victoria, who had always presented herself as beyond reproach, was suggesting therapy. "I think that's an excellent idea," I said carefully. "I would be open to that." Victoria nodded, seeming relieved. "Good. I've taken the liberty of researching some family therapists in the area. I can send you the information." "Thank you," I said. "But Victoria, I need you to understand something. While I'm willing to work on our relationship, my priority has to be Emma. I won't allow her to be criticised and made to feel inadequate, even by family." Victoria's expression tightened momentarily, but then she nodded. "I understand, and I want to do better, with both of you." Through the window, I could see Emma in the garden, carefully showing Victoria her newly planted winter pansies. Victoria was listening attentively, her head bent toward my daughter in a way I'd rarely seen before. When Michael joined us after Victoria left, I recounted our conversation. "Family therapy," he repeated incredulously. "Mum suggested that—" "She did," I confirmed, "and she seemed genuine about wanting to improve things." Michael shook his head in amazement. "I never thought I'd see the day. Do you think she means it?" "I think she's genuinely shaken by what happened." I said. Whether that translates to lasting change remains to be seen. The first therapy session 3 weeks later was uncomfortable and tense. Victoria was defensive, Michael was anxious, and I struggled to express years of accumulated frustrations without sounding vindictive. But it was a start. Over the following months, we established new boundaries and more open communication. Victoria learned to express her insecurities directly rather than through criticism. Michael became more assertive in supporting me when old patterns emerged, and I found ways to honour Victoria's need for recognition while maintaining my own dignity. 6 months later, we celebrated Emma's 8th birthday. Victoria arrived with an age-appropriate gift she had clearly selected with thought, an art set Emma had mentioned wanting, rather than the educational toys or formal dresses she had given in the past. Throughout the party, I watched Victoria interact with Emma. There were moments when I could see her bite back a critical comment, visibly choosing a different approach. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As I arranged candles on Emma's cake, Victoria approached me in the kitchen. "You've done a lovely job with the party," she said. "Emma looks very happy." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely appreciative of the straightforward compliment. "I was wondering," Victoria continued somewhat hesitantly, "if you might be willing to help me plan a summer gathering at my house. With your eye for detail and my experience, I think we could create something special, together." I looked at her in surprise. This was the first time Victoria had acknowledged my eye for detail or suggested a truly collaborative effort. "I'd like that," I said simply. When we gathered around to sing Happy Birthday, I observed my daughter confident, joyful, and uninhibited. The past 6 months had seen her blossom as the weight of her grandmother's constant judgment gradually lifted. She no longer checked for approval before expressing herself or apologized for taking up space. Michael caught my eye across the table and smiled. Our relationship had strengthened too as he found his voice and stepped fully into his roles as husband and father rather than perpetual son. The journey wasn't over. Victoria still had moments of reverting to old patterns and family gatherings weren't always smooth. But we were moving forward with honesty rather than pretense, setting boundaries instead of building walls. Standing up for Emma that Christmas night had been one of the hardest things I'd ever done. It had been painful and messy, and it had forced uncomfortable truths into the open. But watching my daughter blow out her candles surrounded by family members who were learning to truly see and accept her, I knew without a doubt that it had been worth it. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children isn't protection from all conflict, but the example of standing firmly for what's right, even when it's difficult, even when it disrupts the peace we've carefully maintained. In protecting Emma's spirit, I had found my own voice, and in doing so had ultimately given our family the chance for a healthier future together. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member for your child's sake? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics and personal growth. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do is set clear boundaries, even with those closest to us. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it gives you courage in your own family situations.